The opinions expressed during this show are not necessarily those of this station, its employees, or advertisers, but are solely the opinions of the host and the guests that appear on the show. It's time now for Tea Party Talk with Tom Z, hosted by Tom Zawistowski, president of the We the People Convention and executive director of the Portage County Tea Party. Get ready to become a totally engaged American who is informed about the critical issues that are affecting the welfare and individual rights of all Americans today.
S&K Asphalt and Concrete has been serving residential, commercial, and industrial customers since 1988 with quality paving services. The experts at S&K Asphalt and Concrete have the knowledge and experience to meet your paving needs. From parking lots to driveways to repairs and resurfacing, S&K paves the way. Call today for a free estimate. 330-724-9090. That's 330-724-9090. Or visit online at skasphaltconcrete.com.
Are you concerned about your family's safety? Now, Target Thing Pro Shop is a female-friendly gun shop, range, and training center. Target Thing is in Garrettsville. We're on the web at targetthing.com. Target Thing is where they offer guns, ammo, and training to help you keep your family safe. Target Thing Pro Shop.
Fed up with politicians who care more about special interests than people on Main Street? So is Opportunity Ohio. We're working hard to solve Ohio's toughest challenges so Ohioans can create more jobs to grow our economy. See our plans and consider a tax-deductible contribution at opportunityohio.org. Invest $25 for a signed copy of Matt Mayer's book, The Founding Debate, Where Should the Power Over Our Lives Reside? Please visit opportunityohio.org.
All right, and good morning, and welcome to Tea Party Talk with Tom Z. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us this morning. And again, we are listening on the radio on 640 WHLO on Saturday mornings from 9 to 9:30 at 6:40 a.m. in Akron, Ohio. Welcome to all of you who are listening on the radio and those who are tuned in on our live web streams on Wednesday mornings from 10:30 to 11 at www.teapartytalkwithtomz.com. Thank you for joining us with the live video stream. And anybody who's out there in other parts of the country who are listening on iHeartRadio at www.640whlo.com, thank you for joining us this morning. We've got another great show for you, and I'm very excited about our first guest. And he's someone who's been with us in the past. His name is Caleb Dalton from Alliance Defending Freedom out of Arizona, who will help us sort out exactly what happened last week to our religious liberty. Caleb, thank you for joining us again this week.
Tom, thank you for having me.
I'm sure you guys have been very, very busy in the last few days. I hope you had a wonderful Easter. But last week there was just a huge commotion about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act law that was signed in Indiana and then was immediately attacked as legalized discrimination against gays. And so, Caleb, the first question I want to ask you is, did that law actually allow businesses or anyone else to discriminate against gays? Was that really true, Caleb?
Absolutely not. And just so everyone's aware, there's so much misinformation about this law. I'm going to just give you a really brief summary of what the original Religious Freedom Protection Act did. All it did was set up a balancing test. The fundamentals of it said if the government substantially burdens a person's religious exercise, their free exercise, then the government has to have a compelling reason to do that. If the government has a compelling reason, then it has to use the least restrictive means to burden your free exercise. And if it passes those two tests, then the law allowed the government to burden that exercise. It just gave freedom a fair hearing in the court system. What this so-called fix did was take a step farther back than before the original Religious Freedom Restoration Act and said the fix is already in. If a business comes up against an anti-discrimination law, it doesn't matter if the government has a good reason or not. The government doesn't have to show it has a good reason. The government can simply burden that religious exercise no matter what. It picked a winner and a loser, whereas the previous law, the law that was originally passed, gave a balancing test that allowed the courts to look and weigh the different interests that the government might have versus a business might have.
Well, Caleb, I think that's, as you said, there's a lot of misinformation. I think that's part of the problem that, our listeners have had because there is such a thing as religious liberty. It's in the Constitution. It's the first thing in the First Amendment of the Constitution. And what these laws are intended to do is, as you said, provide balance between the rights of one group versus another. And that's why last week I talked about the symbol of justice as a scale, because that's what government's supposed to do. So now in Indiana, basically they caved and basically threw us under the bus as far as our religious liberty. What happened in Arkansas? That didn't get as much play. Did they throw us under the bus in Arkansas as well? Was their fix as bad as Indiana's?
It wasn't. And basically what the Arkansas did is they had passed a version of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act that made certain aspects of it that had been ambiguous. They just made it more clear in the law regarding who is allowed to use it as a defense when the government's burdening your religious liberty. And there were some complaints about it saying, this isn't the exact same law as 20 other states have and as the federal government has had for the last 22 years. So what Arkansas did is they passed the exact same law that is on the federal books, and very similar to the same law that's on the books in 19 other states here in the United States. So it's a robust protections for religious liberty there. It passes basically the balancing test that we just talked about, that says if the government substantially burdens your free exercise of religion, they need to show that they have a compelling interest and that there's not another way that they can meet that interest that wouldn't restrict your freedom. So it just puts that balancing test in place. So there was a lot of pressure from big business there in Arkansas, but there wasn't a complete cave there like there was in Indiana.
Okay, well, so Caleb, the thing that was just so outrageous to me was that, as you said, the federal law has been on the books for 20 years. I mean, Bill Clinton signed it, for goodness sakes, and it passed almost unanimously. There's 19 other states that have this. And Caleb, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Alliance Defending Freedom, handles cases like this, but there has not been this long history of discrimination against gays, has there? Has there been people refusing service to gays in the last 20 years that it makes this a big problem?
There hasn't. I mean, like you said, this has been on the books for 22 years in the federal law, for decades in other states. For example, Connecticut passed their Religious Freedom Restoration Act in 1993, just the same year as the federal law was passed. And one really key misinformation, I think, that is out there is that any business is out there saying, we don't want to serve somebody who identifies as gay. Nobody's out there saying that. All the cases that Alliance Defending Freedom has been taken, for example, you mentioned we might want to talk about the florist in Washington State. Barronelle Stutzman, the 70-year-old florist there, she has been serving the customer who sued her for 10 years. She loves him. She loves serving anyone. But she has a belief about marriage, and the government there, the Attorney General of the state of Washington, is trying to force her to participate in a religious ceremony that she has a strong religious objection to. And that's what this is really about. This isn't about saying, you can't serve a burger to somebody who identifies as gay or for any other reason. This law would protect people from violating their faith by participating in a ceremony. And I think a lot of people have misinformation out there saying, turning gays away from the lunch counter. The Christian faith doesn't teach that. No major faiths in the United States teach that, and it hasn't been happening for the last 22 years in all these states that have these laws. So that's just a lie that's being propagated. It's a scare tactic. The left likes to talk about fear all the time. That's really fear-mongering.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's really what outrages myself and our listeners, those of us in the Tea Party movement. And we're talking with Caleb Dalton from Alliance Defending Freedom. And folks, if you want to support someone, I know you get solicited. Our listeners get solicited by every group in the country. That's a conservative group for money. But if you go to AllianceDefendingFreedom.org, these are the people on the front lines who are really fighting the fight, and that's why we have them on the show with us, and they deserve your support. I think you can tell that because Caleb's been on with us numerous times, and you can tell what good work they do. So Caleb, I guess a couple other things then that flow from this conversation. So now we have this big, attack that's basically manufactured by the left. And I keep telling my listeners, this isn't, about gays or marriage. This is about the left. And they're trying to basically demonize and delegitimize, as Star Parker said in a column, religion in our country. So in this hostile environment, what do you think the chances are? Because Alliance Defending Freedom is representing that woman florist, that 70-year-old florist in Washington State, and you're appealing. Can you get an honest hearing? Do you think you can win that case, Caleb?
Barronelle has a great case and a great argument. I mean, there's no question that, and whether this should be the case or not, there's no question that public opinion and popular, cultural movements do affect how judges look at the law. And I would hope that's not the case here in Washington. Barronelle clearly, she didn't violate the law by discriminating based on sexual orientation. She declined to participate in a specific ceremony. She doesn't discriminate against anybody based on their sexual orientation. And not only that, the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Washington protect her right of free expression to not use her artistry to express messages that she disagrees with. That's fundamental to what it means to be American, is we are not to be coerced to speak a message. The Supreme Court said that back in a case years ago when they said the school system can't force a Jehovah's Witness to stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance or salute the flag. As much as patriotic Americans love that, we're not a totalitarian state. And what the state of Washington is trying to do there through their Attorney General is to force, coerce kind of a totalitarian idea that you agree with us or you can't be in business.
All right. Well, you think this will end up going to the Supreme Court? Do you think it will end up going that far?
It's possible, whichever side, is victorious is always happy, and the other side always has that opportunity to appeal.
Yeah.
And we're hopeful. We're appealing to the Washington Supreme Court here soon, and hopeful for a fair hearing there and for victory there. But if that is not the case, we'll absolutely be appealing to the Supreme Court to vindicate Barronelle's right to free expression. This is really about freedom for everybody. When we have a plurality of ideas, interaction, discussion, tolerance, and disagreement, that's where we thrive as a society. And that's what I want to see for the future of America, is the freedom for everyone, not a totalitarian shutting down of disagreement and dissent.
Well, all right, we'll wrap it up with one last question, and that is, as you know, there's going to be a huge decision by the Supreme Court about the U.S. District 6th District Court of Appeals and states' rights in regards to marriage in our country. Ohio's playing a major role in that. And how do you think this affects the Supreme Court? I've read the judge's ruling in the 6th District, and I've read our Attorney General, Mike DeWine's, those people who listen to the show. When I promoted the show today, I sent a copy of Mike DeWine's, brief about this case. What do you think is going to happen in the Supreme Court about marriage, Caleb? Quickly, if you can tell me that going in. This is going to have some effect.
Absolutely. The core foundational issue is the Constitution doesn't mandate one definition for the states. That's something each state is free to craft their own domestic relations policy, and the Constitution doesn't speak to it. It doesn't require a redefinition of marriage. As to our discussion, there is no question that if the Supreme Court does find a right and impose on all the states one definition of marriage, that freedom will suffer. What we've seen is where these laws are passed, freedom suffers. So that's one reason we need more of these Religious Freedom Restoration Acts. It's also another reason why the Supreme Court should not impose its own views of marriage on the entire United States.
Well, we agree with you, Caleb, and we appreciate you coming on with us again today. Thank you, and we'll have you back, I'm sure. And you're listening to Tea Party Talk with Tom Z. We'll be back after these messages.
I'm Nick Skiriotis, president of S&K Asphalt and Concrete. As a Greek immigrant who came to America legally, my family and I have lived the American dream of freedom, hope, and opportunity. But that dream is fading due to an out-of-control federal government that is mixed up worse than a soup sandwich. We have a president who is putting more and more regulations on businesses, which is stomping economic and job growth. Government has taken more and more of our freedoms. They have taken over our health care and are trying to take over our schools with Common Core. We as Americans must wake up. Get involved before it is too late. We must fight to preserve the America our founders created, a nation that was founded on faith, family, and freedom. The fight is not easy, but anything worth fighting for never is. Our founders paid a heavy price for freedom. 5 of them did not live to see the independence they were fighting for. 9 of them were tortured. 12 of them lost everything they owned, and 3 of them lost their families. Now it is our turn to sacrifice and to fight to preserve our freedoms and the American dream. I am Nick Skiriotis, president of S&K Asphalt and Concrete, and I approve this message.
Fed up with politicians who care more about special interests than people on Main Street? So is Opportunity Ohio. We're working hard to solve Ohio's toughest challenges so Ohioans can create more jobs to grow our economy. See our plans and consider a tax-deductible contribution at opportunityohio.org. Invest $25 for a signed copy of Matt Mayer's book, The Founding Debate: Where Should the Power Over Our Lives Reside? Please visit opportunityohio.org.
All right, and we are back, and I thank Caleb Dalton for being with us, and explaining to you what exactly happened and how this does affect you, and it affects all of us. And again, this, I want you to keep in your mind this idea of balance between rights. We all have our rights, and the government's role is not to impose someone's rights on anyone. It's to provide some balance, and religious freedom and religious liberty is a right, and it needs to be protected. And I'm happy to say that people are stepping up, and they're doing that, and they are protecting it. I think many of you are aware of the fact that there was a fundraising campaign because an Indiana pizza shop got basically sideswiped, blindsided by a local media station, about this law last week. And basically, a young woman honestly said, our pizza shop, would not cater a wedding. Now, first of all, who has a pizza shop cater their wedding? No one, but they were just looking to get a victim to show someone, as a bigot, so to speak. And so there was this big, uproar about this Indiana pizza shop where people just, there was a lesbian athletic, coach encouraging people to burn the pizza shop down. That's how bad this got. This is that intolerance. They keep telling you that you're not tolerant, but it's the left that's not tolerant. They don't want equal rights. They want superior rights. But a funny thing happened when Americans stand up and we know what's right or wrong. First of all, they did this fundraising campaign to help the pizza shop. And what's amazing about that is that they tried to raise $200,000 for the Christian-owned pizzeria, and it's in Walkertown, Indiana. And they actually raised $842,000, almost $900,000 in only 5 days, by 29,161 different donors. Okay, so that was people standing up saying, this is wrong. You shouldn't demonize this pizza shop for standing up for their beliefs. But here's what's really cool about this. They got donations from gays. Okay, for instance, this young woman, this gay woman, apologized to Christian-owned Indiana Pizzeria and sends a donation. And with her $20 donation, she says, as a member of the gay community, I would like to apologize for the mean-spirited attacks on you and your business. I know many gay individuals who fully support your right to stand up for your beliefs and run your business according to those beliefs. We are outraged at the level of hate and intolerance that has been directed at you, and I sincerely hope that you are able to rebuild. And gays who saw that donation commented and supported her. See, folks, I my history, people, say, oh, you're bashing gays, you hate gays. And I've said to you numerous times, I said at the end of last week's show, I don't hate gays. You know why? My background is in coaching. I coached women's sports, women's softball, women's basketball, women's track at the high school and collegiate level. Guess what? Most of them were lesbians. Most of them were gay. I love those girls. I loved them. They were wonderful people, and they were proud, but they weren't intolerant. They weren't hateful. We accepted each other for what we believed in and let each other live. I worked as a young man in a paint store where all the interior designers were gay. These were proud people, and they were not the people that are attacking this pizza shop. They are not the people that are trying to impose their will on 70-year-old florists in Indiana. Okay? So here's another one, and I told you, this is not about gays. This is not about gay marriage. This is about the left trying to destroy churches and religion in our country. Another gay man, Buzz Smith, sent in $250 donation to the campaign as well, accusing the Democratic leadership of hijacking the gay community and promoting religious intolerance. Other members of the gay community wrote in applauding Hoffman's gesture and backing both of their stances. This is what he wrote. Here's what Buzz Smith said. My partner and I have been together almost 27 years. The Democratic leadership hijacked the gay community many years ago and continue to spew the intolerance of religion as they promote the tolerance of their choices. This is one big community organized ploy. He says this is one big community organized ploy with the media to do harm to people with religious convictions, conservatism, capitalism, on and off. Love, peace, and happiness to the family. You understand what he's saying? He's saying this isn't about gays. It's not about him. It's about the left and the media attacking you and your religious beliefs and our nation. Star Parker, who is someone that we've met, she's been up in Cleveland, a wonderful person. She talked about the fact that this has nothing to do with the homosexual campaign is not about freedom, but delegitimization and annihilation of Christianity. On her in a post she made on April 6th, she said, our Declaration of Independence notes our inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But Apple CEO Cook, who purports in his op-ed to care about freedom, protection of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for a Christian, is an act of aggression against atheist. He renders religious freedom meaningless by accusing those who exercise their right of protection of discrimination against those who wish to violate their rights. This isn't a political issue, it's a religious issue. This is about how we treat each other as human beings, Cook wrote. You would think that Cook, the CEO of the most valuable company in the world with a reported personal net worth of $400 million, could perceive his transparent double standard. For him and the other homosexual activists, Christians cannot deserve their religion and live by the Bible's word they hold sacred without discriminating against gays. If this is about how we treat each other as human beings, as Cook writes, then how can he justify the same-sex couple going to a baker or a photographer they well know is Christian, for whom homosexuality is a sin, and demand a cake or photography for a gay wedding? Can Tim Cook really believe that this is a decent, tolerant, freedom-loving, humane behavior? The truth is that the objective of the homosexual campaign is not about American freedom. The objective is about delegitimizing and annihilating Christians in America. That's what she said. And so others are fighting back. And that's why I asked you to fight up and stand for your religious liberty. Okay? 34,000 black and Latino churches have cut their ties with the Presbyterian Church of America after the Presbyterian Church changed their views on same-sex marriage. 34,000 black churches that represent something like 1.2 million blacks and Latinos stood up and said, no, we're not going to do this. And they're right. And we're not going to allow this. Religious freedom is something that's important to all of us. And I posted on Facebook and on Twitter, last Friday, a video about a guy who went to Muslim bakeries and asked them to do a gay wedding cake. They wouldn't do that. So how come Tim Cook and the left are not targeting Muslim bakeries, right? Would you go to a Jewish bakery and ask them to put a swastika on your cake? And if they refuse, would you sue them? Of course not. That's where the line is crossed, and that's what we're fighting against, and that's what you need to fight against. So, there'll be more on this story as we go ahead, but I think it's important for all of you to know that it does affect you. The next thing I want to talk about here this week is the whole job situation. They keep telling you and I the economy is doing great, but in March, we added only 126,000 jobs across the country when they were projecting 250,000 new jobs. So they only did like half of the jobs they predicted would be there, okay? 93 million Americans, for the first time, a 37-year low, okay, of workplace in participation, 93 million Americans are no longer working. 93 million. And of that, 12,202,000 black Americans are not in the labor force. This is a crisis, folks. This is really a crisis. And it's because of the regulation on business and government control of business. That's what's stopping us. That's what's keeping our country from coming back. But again, people are fighting back. One of the reasons that people are not participating is because the benefits are so good. When you can stay home and not work, and live off of somebody else, why would you work? So in Kansas, they're reforming their welfare plan, okay? And they're basically saying that we're not going to pay for you if you get welfare, all right? We are not going to pay for you to go to theme parks or dog or horse racing facilities or sexually-oriented businesses or any retail establishment that provides adult-oriented entertainment or anything like that. Basically, they're saying if we give you welfare, it's because you're in trouble. You need food. You need housing. You need shelter. Not to go see a movie, not to go swimming. That's what welfare's not for that. And they admit in their law that they're trying to make people uncomfortable when they get welfare. Well, why? Well, Benjamin Franklin said that back before our country even started, before the Constitution was written. He said charity it's important that if you give charity, that people are uncomfortable with it, so they will get off the charity. So they will act, okay? And what we're doing is we're giving people reasons not to. And that's the left's design. They're trying to put an anchor on you, the hardworking Americans, and burden you with all these taxes so you can, quote unquote, take care of your fellow man. Well, that's not how it works. We all have to do our share, and we need to have policies that encourage that. And that's one of the things that we're not doing, and we congratulate Kansas for doing that, okay? Next thing I want to talk to you about is a story that came up this week where Grover Norquist has written a new book where he claims that the IRS kneecapped the Tea Party by targeting us and basically gave Obama a victory. And I want to talk about this because I've said this to you before. We will not be victims. The Tea Party was hurt by the IRS targeting. There were people who were scared off. There were groups that closed. But it did not affect our effort. I can tell you from firsthand experience in 2012, the Tea Party was more organized. We did better work in 2012 than we did in 2010. We didn't lose in 2012. Romney lost. And Romney lost because the Republican establishment picked him because they knew that he would lose. I know that's a strong statement, but let me just be clear. In 2010 and in 2014, we had landslide victories. The reason we did is because those elections and all the elections since 2008 have been about Obamacare, okay? And the worst person you could have picked to be your presidential candidate was Mitt Romney because he could not attack Obama on Obamacare because he implemented Obamacare in Massachusetts. And they knowingly did that. And when we fought for them, we didn't win because they were so inept. Romney's campaign people were horrible. The Tea Party people would show them exactly what they had to do to win, and they wouldn't do it. So, Grover, I'm sorry. You're wrong. They didn't win because they handicapped the Tea Party movement. They didn't win because they picked the wrong candidate. And people like John Boehner and Lindsey Graham and John McCain wanted Mitt Romney to be the candidate because they knew he would lose in the Chamber of Commerce. And those guys really don't want to get rid of Obamacare because they're making a boatload of money. I also wanted to bring your attention to the story where the judge has ordered the IRS to release their list of Tea Party groups they were targeting. They've never released the list, folks, and I got news for you. They don't want to release the list because it's bigger than anyone ever knew. And I know that personally because I have a list. I know of a list. I know who was targeted because of my involvement with that, and they don't. Got to wrap up here with a couple important notes. First of all, A&E did cancel that Neighbors with Benefits show I asked you to call about. Thank you for that. Next, I will be speaking in Worcester, Ohio on Tuesday, April 14th at 7 p.m. at the Wayne County Commissioners Meeting Room at the Wayne County Administration Building at 428 West Liberty Street in Worcester, 44691, Tuesday, April 14th at 7 p.m. Come to Worcester if you're down in Wayne County and see me. I'd love to meet you. Also, the Cincinnati Tea Party is having their big Wednesday, April 15th bash. You can learn more about that by going to Cincinnati Tea Party's Facebook page. The Ohio Liberty Coalition is having a big statewide meeting on Saturday, April 18th. from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in Marysville, Ohio. You can find out more about that at OhioLibertyCoalition.org. Thank you for joining me this week. We love having you. We hope you learned something. You're listening to Tea Party Talk with Tom Z.
This is former State Representative Matt Lynch inviting you to join me for common sense conservative conversation each Wednesday evening at 6:30 p.m. on How I See It. You can listen live or listen to the podcast anytime, 24/7 at mattlynch.com. Each week I am joined by my daughter Karen Quay on a rhino hunt as we separate the phonies from the real conservatives who are willing to stand up for faith, family, and freedom. We challenge the politically correct politicians who say one thing to get your vote, then do another once they are in office. 2015 is a new year, but too many of our politicians didn't get the message that business as usual in Washington is no longer acceptable. If our representatives in Congress are too scared or too weak to speak up, then we must raise our voices and demand they fight back against the liberal loonies. Never forget that we, the voters, are in charge, and we are the masters of our government, and we cannot let politicians ever forget it. So listen in every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. or anytime at mattlynch.com. I'm Matt Lynch, and that's how I see it.